Evening at the Movies is a proud member of the I Did Not Make These Rankings podcast network. Other shows in the network include Mass Debaters, The Sip List, Crushgasm, Love is Black, Men Are the Prize, Crime Rewind, and Literature Reapers. You can find out all about our shows and more at idnmtrpodcastnetwork.com. Happy listening. You are now entering the world of a movie review. A world full of drama, joy, ridicule, movie spoilers, unpopular opinions, and adult humor for as far as the eye can see. Welcome to An Evening at the Movies.
Hello, everybody. Greetings, and welcome back to one of your favorite movie-based podcasts out there in the interwebs of the world. This is An Evening at the Movies, the podcast where, as you all know, we eat the stale popcorn, we drink the watered-down sodas, and we discuss all of our favorite movies and why we love them. So, joining me this week on our show, we have a brand new guest here for the first time ever. We are joined by Miss Jennifer Churchill. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. Thank you, Kasey.
Not a problem. It feels like we booked this appearance like a long time ago.
Last year, technically.
Oh, technically, yeah. I mean,
2023, but yeah, it was a while ago.
It's definitely one of those episodes that got booked a while back that I've been chomping at the bit for, because we're going to be talking about a movie that I really love and a director that I really love. But before I get to all of that, though, would you like to introduce yourself to the listeners and let them know a little bit about yourself?
Certainly. My name is Jennifer Churchill, as you said, like Winston. And I don't know if I'm related. My dad likes to claim relation. So I have loved classic movies specifically. I'm a movie lover generally, but I really love what I call classic movies, kind of like the golden era. I like silent films. I like the history of film. It's a pretty new art form, really. And so it's exciting to study the beginnings of film. And I really love Charlie Chaplin and Buster Keaton and Clara Bow and all the silent stars. And I like the early 20s and the transition to talkies in the late 20s and the 30s and 40s. And then after that, movies start to get too new for me, except for, this one that we're going to talk about today. I don't want to do a spoiler alert. You haven't said the name of the movie we're discussing today yet, but it's in color and it's from the 50s. So I work in PR, and I went to Aquinas College in Grand Rapids, Michigan, and had an English Lit degree, but I kept taking all these film history classes and ended up with a film history minor, and had an amazing professor, Dr. Andrew Jeffcheck, who wrote film reviews for the Grand Rapids Press for decades and was really smart and kind of showed me that film could be an academic pursuit of sorts and wasn't just something to mindlessly consume, but to understand and watch intelligently. And to me, that makes me enjoy it more. Some people are like, oh, you look too much into it. Just sit back and enjoy it. And I do that too, but you can't help but, know what you know and pay attention to things. And I don't know. I love movies. They're amazing. It's so many art forms and so many people that come together to make them. It's different than just painting or writing a novel alone in a room. It really requires an entire team of people, the writers, the actors, the set design, the music, everything. So it's incredible to me that films get made in the first place. And so I go to the Turner Classic Film Festival every year. I was at the first one in 2010, and I met a lot of the TCM execs and kind of know a lot of people that go to that festival every year and know a lot of people who work at Turner Classic Movies. And I kept hearing the conversation about the fact that TCM is worried they won't have a future generation of, an audience because it skews older, the audience of these films. And it's too bad because, it's only It's only an old movie if you haven't seen it. Or wait, is that the right quote? Lauren Bacall said something about it's only something about it being a new movie if you haven't seen it. It's a new movie if you haven't seen it, something like that, which is true. Just because it was made in 1934 or 1956 or whatever year, if you've never seen it, it's still a new movie to you. And
1959.
1959, whatever movie we might be talking about today.
Potential spoiler.
Potential spoiler. But so I wrote a children's book called Movies Are Magic, and Ben Mankiewicz, who's a host on Turner Classic Movies, wrote the intro. And so TCM's been very supportive of it. And it's for kids, elementary age kids, and it starts with the beginning of storytelling and then a quick run through of the invention of series motion photography and the Edward Muybridge, the horses photos that people see. And it just goes through the history. It ends in 1939 with the two big successful color blockbusters that came out in 1939, Gone with the Wind and Wizard of Oz. And that's just sort of where I've ended, because to me, that's sort of like a good ending point if you're talking about the beginning of film. You get through the invention of film, silent film, color, music, and then it goes on from there. So there could be a part two. And then
there's still a whole lot of rich history in film to come out. I mean, you could have written a book that thick.
Yeah.
It's still not covered at all.
Right. And it really, my goal was to just get kids excited about classic movies and think they're cool and understand that linear connection between the invention of film and these handheld devices they walk around with watching YouTube videos all day. I want them to know like where those came from. And yeah, I'm guilty too. But and then that led to the Film Detective Network, which is on Sling, and it's a streaming channel that shows restored films. And it's kind of like TCM's little brother, I guess, or little cousin, and they work together with film rights and things. So Phil, who owned the Film Detective, it now is owned by Cinedigm, I believe. He sold it. But we worked on this, creating this series called Classic Films for Kids, and you can find it on the Film Detective's YouTube channel. If you just look for Film Detective and then look for Classic Films for Kids on their playlists. And we did, you'll see, 10 or so, I think, movies. It's the full movie, and it's my 8-year-old son and I introducing the film, and then we do an outro. So we try to just provide some context to get kids drawn into the movie. And I'd have to look to see all the movies we did, because we filmed most of them over a week in like a year and a half ago now. So, but I know we have The Kid, Charlie Chaplin. We have an Abbott and Costello movie. There's just a range of movies that are from like the 1920s to 50s on there. But so we just try to make it fun, giving context and talking to kids with a kid's perspective to just kind of draw them in and get them excited. So that's what I do.
One of the reasons why I really love that concept, though, is the fact that I've got, Nico's 7 years old now? And he's really at that age where he's really starting to fall in love with movies.
Oh, that's so fun.
Not as much like the classic movies, but he loves Jurassic Park. He loves Polar Express. He loves, Nightmare Before Christmas and things. And I, as being the movie loving uncle, am all about, helping foster that love of movies, because there's so much worse things that he could be,
oh yeah,
in love with and want to experience than, wanting to come over and visit Uncle Kasey and watch a movie.
And yeah, I call it it's okay to brainwash children with the things you love. And I just kind of expose my son to these old movies. I don't always say, sit down, we're going to watch this, but I just have them on and hope it sort of sinks in. When he was really little, he loved Fred Astaire movies because he loved the tap dancing when he was really little, like a toddler. And that would really grab his attention. And so I thought, I just want him to see these things and have them be in his head somewhere as a positive thing. And I put Casablanca on yesterday, just while I was cleaning house and doing dishes, and he was like, "Oh, I don't want to watch this, Mom." And I said, "Well, it's just going to be on. You can, you do your own thing and read a book, do whatever." And then he couldn't help it. He's like, "Oh, where are the letters of transit?" He got really intrigued by where the letters of transit were hidden, and he couldn't help it. He got drawn in. So that was a successful parenting moment for me.
I love that too, because so many of, and I'm not faulting the younger generations, but so many of the younger people in society aren't necessarily going to be as excited or passionate about watching Casablanca or, you know, any wealth of other, classic movies that are out. I mean, when you hear classic movies, a lot of people think, oh, it's old and boring and dumb. That's
Mm-hmm.
not the case.
No.
I mean, I'm sure that there was plenty of, boring and dumb movies that came out back then, but not all. I mean, some of the greatest movies of all time are classic movies that came out in the 30s, 40s, 50s, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So, um,
Sounds like a
with
good
all
segue, maybe to. I
right, I mean,
don't know.
we've, you know, been here bantering back and forth for almost 12 minutes, and listeners may be wondering what we're going to be talking about for the next little bit. So I will say this. This is the second time this director has made an appearance this year on An Evening at the Movies, and the fourth time that he's had a movie discussed on our show. Just what was it? Just a couple weeks ago, we discussed Rear Window on the show. We've also done two different episodes on Psycho, but I digress. We're going to talk about a different movie that isn't necessarily, well, okay. Psycho can be considered like a horror classic, but like Rear Window and this movie are very much not in alignment with that genre, but they're still great movies. So we're going to be discussing the Alfred Hitchcock classic North by Northwest, which I am excited for. I wanted to talk about Hitchcock a lot on the show because Hitchcock is one of my favorite directors of all time. But it's a matter of finding people that want to come on and talk about Hitchcock because, like I said a few minutes ago, not everybody's always down to sit down and watch a classic movie. Luckily, I have a co-host, Amanda, who's not here today, but she's generally, we share a brain. So generally, if I suggest something, she accepts it. If she suggests something, I accept it. So, but let's see. Before we get into it, really quick, just to let some people know some background information on the movie. North by Northwest released on July 1st, 1959. Like I said, was directed by Alfred Hitchcock, released by MGM, had a $4.3 million budget and made $9.8 million at box office. And then has a 97% rating on Rotten Tomato as well. And after you listen to this episode and are chock full of spoilers, if you haven't seen the movie yet and want to go out and watch it, you can find it on. It is streaming on Tubi or BritBox. Let's see. All right, so discussion. what? I've got 3 questions that both of them are screaming at me. Could be the first question I ask, and it's a matter of which one do I want to go with first. Okay, so what do you feel like the thematic meaning behind North by Northwest is?
Oh, wow. The thematic meaning. I don't know. I don't really have an answer for that, but I could tell you why I picked it. Maybe the theme will come out.
There's probably something in your answer that is probably a good way to latch on to the answer to that question.
You know, there's kind of the Cold War thing, the the whole secret agent spy kind of paradigm that was popular at the time. So I don't know if that's the theme. I love that it's like he's an everyman. I don't know if we want to just give like a basic premise of the plot, but Cary Grant it's a mistaken identity, and I know the CIA is involved, and he ends up being chased all over the country via airplane, train, bus, what have you.
Planes, trains, and automobiles.
So it's it's like an everyman mistaken identity thrown into I don't know if glamorous is the right word, but a thrilling, exciting world of espionage that isn't his normal day-to-day life. So you kind of go along for the journey with him, which is fun. I think if someone has not seen North by Northwest and think that they don't like old movies, and maybe even if they've seen Psycho already, which is usually the Hitchcock movie most people have seen, even if they don't watch a lot of classic movies, I think they'll be pleasantly surprised by this. I would say anyone who likes James Bond movies would like this movie. It came out in 1959, and a lot of people say it's the first unofficial James Bond movie. He doesn't play James Bond, but Ian Fleming, who wrote the James Bond novels that all the movies were based on, or the first movies were based on, knew Cary Grant. There were letters and some conversations about them wanting whoever they are before the Broccoli team bought the rights, but possibly having Hitchcock direct the first Bond movie. And I think Cary Grant was actually offered the role of playing James Bond before Sean Connery was. And if you watch the first time you see Sean Connery as James Bond in Dr. No in 1960, they pretty much dressed him up and had him act like Cary Grant. He's at the baccarat table. He's at a casino wearing a tux.
Yeah,
he has a fake
he's sitting there at the table, and he's got the tan and the cigarette hanging out of the corner of his mouth, and they're like Bond.
Yeah,
James
it's
Bond.
like Bond. Yeah, and it's it's exciting. All these different destinations. The filming locations are really fun. They really go all over the place. They start in New York City and end up at the oh my gosh, what's it called with all the presidents? Mount Rushmore. Yeah, they end up at Mount Rushmore. So it's just exciting.
Which
I think
actually is a very
exciting
exciting scene. No, I'm just going to say that whole Mount Rushmore sequence is actually a very exciting scene to ultimately. It's not the final scene of the movie, but it's like the last main scene of. It's one of the most action-packed scenes of the entire movie.
Yeah.
And considering this is what it came out in July of '59, so this is probably being filmed in summer of '58, maybe. I'm guessing that, and the fact that you don't have an awful lot of green screens and CGI effects and all of that to mask the danger of the situation that the actors are in. And when you've got, Cary Grant and Eva Marie Saint hanging off of the side of one of the president's faces,
yeah,
it's like, okay. exciting. If somebody's hand had slipped, then I'm sure it wasn't always 100% dangerous, but I'm sure it wasn't as safe as what it would be like today.
Yeah, and they actually filmed that they recreated that, and I believe they filmed that in a studio, on a studio lot. Like they recreated Mount Rushmore, I think. Don't quote me. I'm pretty sure I have read that he
Well,
couldn't
that's
get permit.
probably the
He filmed a little bit there, but I think he couldn't get permission, and so I think they had to like recreate the big bust of
yeah.
the
I was
faces.
gonna say I would imagine whoever the parks department or whoever presides over Mount Rushmore probably wouldn't have been excited to have a
No.
bunch of people hanging off the side
Crawling
of the
around.
president's face. Well, I mean, at the same, if something happens and somebody does end up falling to their death off the side of the mountain, it's a lot of bad press that your monument's going to get.
Yeah. Good
But
good
then,
thinking from a
at,
PR
at,
perspective.
well, yeah, but I mean, also at the same time, though, too, what happens if, you know, the monument in some way, shape, or form gets destroyed because of things that they have to do to be able to get the shots they're trying to get to make
Right.
everything come together as a whole.
And it's interesting that you're interested in this scene because I think I mentioned to you in an email that I met Eva Marie Saint, who plays the lead female in this film, and
Yes, you
she
did.
actually talked about filming that scene and said, when you watch, I can tell you how I met her, but when she said when she told me this personally while we were waiting in line to go to the bathroom. um, that when they film that scene, there's a scene where she bumps her elbow and rubs it, and you see her do that in the movie. She said she really did hurt herself, and that was real, and they kept it in the film. So she actually did bump her elbow. I mean, she was fine, but she got a little
I
bump,
actually,
a little bruise.
I actually remember seeing that when I rewatched the movie the last time. Now that you bring that up,
Yeah, she does that. Like she rubs her. She said that was a real injury.
mm,
I don't think there was blood
yeah,
drawn. But yeah, she was at the 2010 TCM Classic Film Festival, and she's gone to several others since then. And she was there. It was the first year of that festival, and she was there to introduce North by Northwest. But this was the night before. There was a kind of like a VIP party that I found myself at with mostly movie stars and then a few nobodies like me
wow,
wandering around. Like Alec Baldwin was there, Cher was there. It was really weird. It wasn't a very big party, but and Robert Osborne, who was the host of TCM, was there. And that's who I was most excited to meet. I had never met him yet at that point. And he was sitting in one of those curved booths in the corner with TCM execs all around him, and you couldn't really get to him. And I'm like, oh, I would really love to meet Robert Osborne. And so I went over I was waiting in line to go to the restroom, and there were stairs that went down towards the women's restroom. And I stepped out of the way for this lady. And I'm like, oh, go ahead, just being polite. Hadn't really looked at who she was. And we're standing there for a minute, and then she's like, oh, you're so sweet. She was very nice and appreciative that I let her get ahead of me in line. And then I said, oh, are you Miss Eva Marie Saint? And she's like, oh, bless your heart for recognizing me. She was she was so like sweet, old school movie star, just nice to me. She didn't know who I was, but she was super nice. So we sat there chatting, and she said, oh, don't ask me what it was like to kiss Cary Grant. What do you think it was like to kiss Cary Grant? I'm like, I don't know. And then I just laughed jokingly, well, not jokingly, but I said, you know who I'm really excited to meet at this party? I said, Robert Osborne, like the host of TCM. I'm like, he's in my living room every night. It would be so cool to meet him. But I said, he's over in the corner. And she said, you want to meet him? She's like, can you hold your pee? I said, sure. She said, come with me. She dragged me over to his corner booth. She said, Robert, I want you to meet my friend Jennifer. I'm going to go back to the bathroom. Everyone move out of the way. Jennifer, sit down. And she made the TCM execs get up, shoved me, kind of got me into the booth. And I just sat there with Robert Osborne for like an hour chatting with him. So she introduced me to him,
that's a
which was
long
really
time to
cool.
have to hold a pee.
It was worth it. I
I'm sure
wasn't gonna leave
it
Robert's.
absolutely was.
He was. I joked he was my boyfriend, or my friends called him my boyfriend because he was in my living room every night. Because I just watched Turner
Well,
Classic Movies all the time back then. That was before I had a
absolutely,
child, so I could just watch Turner Classic Movies all the time.
and not have to worry about Mom, not again.
Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, that was a fun
So,
story. And she's super lovely, and she is still with us and still beautiful. So
which really says a lot though too, because if you think about it, I don't like to think about the whole time differential and all of that, but this movie came out in what 1959,
hmm
and
65 years
you
ago,
said,
I think.
well, yeah, and
I'm not
like
good
you
at math.
said, this was what 2010 that this happened.
hmm
So you're looking at 51 years since she did that movie,
Yeah.
and I don't even want to wager a guess as to how old she was when they made that movie because she doesn't look old per se, and I've been brought up to never question a lady's age as well, but I mean obviously she's an adult, so like you said, 65 years later, so she's still with us, and she's got to be pushing.
I just looked it up.
She's
She's 99. She's 99 years old. So she was about 20,
Wow,
25 or so when she filmed North by Northwest.
that was about the age I had in my brain that I was thinking,
I cheated and
but
looked it up.
I'm
But
glad
yeah, she's
I'm
99.
glad
It's amazing.
I'm glad you took the cue of me rambling and going on and dragging it out and actually took the initiative to Google that then. But yeah, 99 years old and still here. I mean,
And she must have been like 85 when I met her. I would have thought if I just met her on the street, I would think this is a woman in her 70s. She did not
well, yeah,
seem 85.
I'm pretty sure she probably did not look the same as she looked in the movie
No,
when you
no.
met her.
But not that much different. she's she still looked, I mean, I recognized her right away. She still had her, blonde hair, kind of the same hairstyle, and petite and
Really,
dressed, very lovely. And she was just very sweet and lovely.
I would love to meet classic actors from all the way back then in that era. But
It's pretty
like you
fun.
just did the math and figured out though too, there probably aren't that many of those left.
Not a lot. A lot of the kids and grandkids of classic movie stars go to a lot of the Film Noir Festival and the
Mhm.
Classic Film Festival, and so you meet a lot of kids. Like Cary Grant's daughter, Jennifer Grant, often goes to the TCM Film Fest, and they'll introduce a movie or talk a little bit before the film about remembering being on the set, that sort of thing. So you meet a lot of kids and grandkids of famous movie stars, but some of these stars are still around. Kim Novak is still around and shows up at screenings of Vertigo, and so we still have some. I think because they were so young when they were in the movies.
Probably. Well, I mean, even going all the way back to the 30s and, The Wizard of Oz being one of my top favorite movies of all time. Judy Garland was not that. She wasn't as young as the character in the book, but she wasn't that old when she made the movie either.
Right. Yeah.
So, but back to the discussion though, back on topic.
Yes. Yes.
Um, I'm glad you brought up the whole concept of how many people look at this movie as being the unofficial first James Bond movie, because that was actually one of the three questions that was fighting in my brain over whether or not I wanted to ask it first or not. But so obviously, I feel like I know what the answer is, but um, just so I make sure my answer in my head is correct, would you happen to agree with that statement that it's kind of sort of in a way the unofficial first Bond movie?
I would say so. And I know there's a lot of James Bond experts out there. I am not a James Bond expert, but during the pandemic, my now fiance and I decided. Well, I think it was April or May of 2020. So when all the kind of lockdowns and all of that were in high gear, we said, well, what, I've always wanted to watch all of the James Bond movies. So we watched every single James Bond movie in order of release, starting with Dr. No from 1960. And we told ourselves by the time we're done, the pandemic should be over, which silly us, it wasn't. But but what
Not
was
even
sad
close.
but Sean Connery. So when we started, and Sean Connery is my favorite Bond, like many females, because
absolutely,
he's gorgeous. And, so he was still alive when we started in summer of 2020, watching all the James Bond, and we talked about it. We're like, it's so cool, he's still around, and you look at him back here in 1960, and then he died like the day we watched the last James Bond movie with him in it. He died that day. It was really weird and made us sad. We're like, oh,
well, I didn't realize it was that day. I feel bad about making the whole joke that you jinxed it.
I hope not. It was weird for us where we were just hyper aware that Sean Connery was still on the planet. I've never met him, or I had never met him.
Honest to God, would have loved to have met
him. He
him.
passed away that year.
But I mean, I kind of, in a lot of ways, agree with that statement though too, because I can see a lot of similarities between the two characters, being Cary Grant's character and obviously Bond.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, he's very so. Ian Fleming, who wrote
Connery
Bond. The books, right? Ian Fleming, who wrote the books, wrote the character based on Cary Grant influenced. It was kind of like a mishmash of himself because he was actually a real spy. Ian Fleming was, and Cary Grant. He was thinking of Cary Grant writing the character in the first place. So it's not that strange, I guess, that we see those elements. But in 1959, there had never been a James Bond movie yet. It came out the next year, and North by Northwest it pretty much fits the model of a James Bond movie. There's the intrigue and traveling to exotic locations and the femme fatale. And yeah. So I guess Eva Marie Saint was the first Bond girl, if we want to go in that direction.
Well, I personally think she would have made an amazing Bond girl anyway. But when I went back to rewatch North by Northwest, I picked up on a lot of those elements, and it's like I know this movie and Dr. No were really close to releasing at the same time. I didn't remember if Dr. No came out before or right after.
Yeah, next
year.
But
I knew it was probably within a year or two of Hitchcock's movie coming out.
Yeah, and I think I don't know for sure why it didn't work out. I'd read somewhere that Cary Grant just didn't want to he said he didn't do sequels, and he didn't want to commit. They wanted him to sign a 3-picture contract, and I think he felt he was 55 at the time, but he still looked amazing. I mean, he was 55. Cary Grant was 55 in North by Northwest, and he's still definitely a leading man in that movie.
Oh, by far. Yeah. I mean, he definitely commands a presence whenever he comes on camera in North by Northwest.
And the suit he wears, people have written articles in magazines about the suit that he wears in that movie, how it just fits him perfectly. And, the suit is as much of a star of that film as Cary Grant himself. It's sort of the epitome of his sophisticated, suave, perfectly tailored suit kind of look.
Well, and there's so much iconic about that movie anyway to begin with, whether it's the suit, whether it's them hanging off the side of Mount Rushmore, the airplane scene.
Oh, that is a great scene.
In the middle of freaking nowhere where it keeps flying over his head and the near misses, and then ultimately he ends up underneath the fuel truck, and then the plane crashes into the fuel truck.
Yeah.
And I mean, for a lot of people, I would imagine if you haven't seen all of this movie, that airplane scene is definitely something you have seen at some point somewhere in your life.
Yeah, or it's been paid homage to in another movie or something. I'm trying to think.
Yeah.
There's another movie. And people say another reason to watch these old movies is you understand the pop culture references that are made to these films. Like, it's cool to be in the know, and The Simpsons probably has a sequence from North by Northwest. I don't know, but probably. But people make
I
references to. What, you're going to
Go
Google
ahead,
that
keep
one? No.
keep
So yeah,
talking.
so you got to
Google
look it up.
magic, because I actually believe there is a Simpsons reference or a Simpson connection
There's got to
to.
be something. Yeah.
Yeah,
I don't know how they could not. Um, but it's referenced in the pop culture. It's good to know the source material of references that you hear, so you get the joke, if nothing else. And it's a very sophisticated film, and it is in Technicolor. So a lot of Hitchcock movies are in black and white, but he has a lot in color also. So if you're afraid of black and white, this Technicolor movie is very exciting. And Bernard Herrmann does the music. Of course, the musical score is awesome. And you know who else
I
I
know.
love in this movie? Or did you look it up?
I did look it up,
Oh,
and there it is, right there on the screen.
oh my gosh, they did do it.
Okay, so
The Simpsons
as long as you're
reference North by
watching, you
Northwest.
might be able to see it in the episode. If When I actually drop the episode and all of that, I will post that picture in the Facebook group and on Twitter so that everybody can see that yes, there is a Simpsons connection between that, and because the Simpsons are very good at making all kinds of pop culture references
Oh yeah,
throughout their
brilliant.
3,700 seasons that the show has been on TV.
Longest running show of all time or something. I think. I
Something
think
like that.
this
But
is
yeah, I mean, the show is almost as old as I am.
it.
Almost.
I was gonna say I am older than The Simpsons.
Oh, so am I.
I remember when they were on the Tracy Ullman show before they were their own show. It was a little cartoon segment on the
Yes.
Tracy Ullman show. I remember. That's how old I am. I remember that.
I was in junior high when those, maybe sixth grade when that was on. So yeah,
Yeah,
that,
somewhere around
I
there.
mean, I turned
That's funny.
47 in February, so that goes to show you how old I am.
Well, and speaking of old, not that you're old, but you said the word old. The other character who's awesome in this movie, so Cary Grant's awesome. Eva Marie Saint is gorgeous. Her clothes are gorgeous. It's very steamy, sexual kind of, as much as they could be in 1959. There's a lot of phallic references, like when they go through the train tunnel.
Yeah, I
It's supposed
did
to
see
be,
that in my research as well. That was Hitchcock's Freudian slip
yeah,
that he wanted to make sure he added in at the end of the movie.
it's pretty funny actually. But yeah, but she's very.
We
I mean, it's very their banter is very a lot of sexual
Coy,
innuendos and coy,
oh
and
yeah,
it's steamy.
very much so. 'Cause I remember watching it again, and then that's one of the things I noticed is like, this is 1959, and I don't recall hearing a lot of this type of stuff, you know, in movies at the time.
Yeah, it's pretty racy.
So
I mean, they aren't super blatant where maybe kids wouldn't understand the innuendo, but you get it as an adult. It's
yeah. Oh, I can guarantee you that if I had seen this 35 years ago, I probably wouldn't have gotten a whole lot of the references being a young kid at the time.
yeah.
But Yeah, as a 47-year-old adult, like, mm-hmm.
And I read that there's a line Eva Marie Saint says to Cary Grant's character when they're flirting, and she says, I guess the original line was, "I never make love on an empty stomach," but the censors changed it to, "I never." What did she say? I never kiss on an empty stomach, or I never
I think it was,
something.
I never kiss on an empty stomach, I
Yeah,
believe.
they had to take out "make love," and it was some other, less shocking phrase that kind of meant the same thing. But so
Well,
it did get censored a little bit.
because that's another thing is even like going to the other side of the equation, like, and you can attest with the fact that because you and your fiance binge watched the entire 25 movies of Bond, but even
Plus
like
the
most,
unofficial Bond that was there's an
oh,
unofficial one
really?
with Sean Connery when he wasn't part of the franchise anymore. So it doesn't have the cool Bond music, so it kind of falls flat. But which one was that? Kim Basinger's in it. Oh no, I can't remember which one it was.
I remember hearing that there was an unofficial Bond that he was tied to, and I think it was right around the time that On Her Majesty's Secret Service came out, and there was that
Hmm.
whole conflict of, he was doing that, but not linked to the studio.
Oh,
So
it was called Never Say Never Again, and it came out in 1983, and it was based on the Thunderball, and it
probably
wasn't
about the same
official.
time
Yeah,
that On Her Majesty's Secret Service came out,
yeah, it
and
wasn't part
him
of the
doing
official
that.
franchise.
Yeah,
See, yeah.
and because of that, they replaced him with Lazenby, and then
Hmm.
Lazenby fell flat on his face, and they brought Connery back for a movie, and then moved on to Roger Moore.
Roger Moore was next, I think. Yeah. Yes. And then
Connery,
the guy who
Lazenby,
played Remington
Connery.
Steele guy,
Yeah,
whatever his name was, Pierce
yeah, I
Brosnan.
would.
Pierce Brosnan.
Yeah, that's a whole nother concept that I haven't necessarily approached yet on the show, but I've had people ask about whether or not we'll discuss James Bond, and it's like I'm conflicted over it because like the franchise is so big.
Hmm.
Like the whole, I mean, I've had people ask about doing Marvel movies as well, and it's like, well, okay,
Which one?
exactly. Do you want me to start at the beginning and work our way through to the end? Because if that's the case, you know, it's probably going to be a 2 or 3 year process to get through all 25 Bond movies. Or
Yeah.
Marvel's got 30 something movies out right now. So, you know,
Just keeps going.
exactly. But
But we should talk about some of the other actors in this movie who are awesome, like
oh
James
god, yeah,
Mason, Walt.
not the first movie that I saw James Mason in either.
What was the first one you saw him in? And then I'll share the first one I saw him in.
20,000 Leagues Under the Sea.
Oh, cool. Yeah, he's good. I saw him in A Star
So
Is
my
Born.
first impression. Oh
The very first
yeah,
Star is Born in 1937.
the original that was remade before it was remade,
Yeah.
and in 5 years it'll probably get remade again. I hope not, but I digress.
I think 5 is enough.
No, yeah. Um, no, he left a very lasting impression on me in 20,000 Leagues. I believe 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea was actually the very first movie I ever watched on the Disney Channel when I
Oh
was
my
a
gosh.
kid. When I think my mom got the Disney Channel for us, and the very first night after she hooked up the little cable box converter to the TV, 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea was on, so we got to stay up and watch 20,000 Leagues Under
Oh,
the Sea,
fun.
and
Fun.
we only made it like halfway into the movie before we fell asleep.
I wish that my son would fall asleep. He's a night owl. He'd just stay up all night if I didn't make him go to bed. But that's good. You
There,
guys fell
yeah,
asleep.
Yeah, I've turned into a night owl lately anyway, but I digress. So, no, James Mason is an incredibly talented actor. He's been in so many amazing movies. You know,
Yeah,
I highly
he's great
recommend
in
it.
this role too. He's a good bad guy. I don't think that's a spoiler to say he's a bad guy. And Martin Landau, his lackey, is that his name, Martin Landau? Yeah, he's
Yeah,
awesome. He's awesome, and he's memorable in this movie too.
again, another iconic actor, classic actor from numerous classic movies that many people probably know, but maybe if you aren't paying attention while watching the movie, it might go, you know, over your head a little bit. But no, yeah, Martin Landau is a huge name in movies.
Oh yeah, he's super young. If people know who he is as an older actor, it's surprising to see him so young in this movie. And the woman who plays Cary Grant's mom, her name's Joyce or Jessie Royce Landis. She's awesome. She's like the besides Cary Grant's, little comments that are funny, she's the humor in the film. Just her, she's so, like rolling her eyes at Cary Grant all the time, even though he's, you can tell she loves her son, but she's like, oh, his antics, and she's sort of the straight man to his foibles. I think she's great, and I read somewhere that she plays his mother, but she was only like in real life was only like a year or two older than Cary Grant at the time of filming. But of course, a 55-year-old man is still a leading man, but a 55-year-old woman has to play a mother. But she's awesome in it. I think she's super. She's kind of a lively, bright spot of the film, and makes it
Absolutely.
feel less heavy. Even though, I mean, it's an exciting thriller. It's a mystery. There's all the intrigue, and then there's the funny one-liners. It's a
Definitely.
it's a great film.
So, for the sake of time and everybody having busy schedules and life going on, I think it's probably a good time to jump off with our review
Hmm.
and rating for the movie. So, I, as always, would love to give the guest a chance to give her thoughts, final thoughts, and rate the movie out of five, one being horrible and five being a masterpiece.
Can I go
So,
now? I can give
yep,
it a
go
rating.
ahead.
Five is a masterpiece, right?
Five is a masterpiece.
Then
One is hot garbage.
this one is definitely a five. I don't think there's a wasted moment on screen. The action just keeps it starts right at the beginning. They don't waste any time. And about the 2-minute mark is Alfred Hitchcock's cameo. There's always a cameo of Hitchcock himself in every one of his films. You'll see him either missing the bus or standing by the bus stop or something right at the beginning. But this movie just right when you jump in, he's Cary Grant's character is an ad exec or marketing person in New York, and he's got his secretary, and he's so busy rushing off that she's running alongside him on the busy street taking notes, and then he goes to meet some gentleman at for lunch, and that's where the confusion begins with the mixed identity because he gets up to answer a phone call, and the bad guys are waiting to hear that name being announced, and it just like there's no wasted time in this movie at all. And that's one of the complaints I hear people say about older classic movies is a lot of times there's a slow start. Even my favorite movie of all time, The Thin Man from 1934, I always warn people, like, I'm like, the first 10 minutes are really boring. They're setting it up, they're introducing you to the guy, and then the movie starts, and then it's just hilarious and awesome. But they would spend more time with the setup back then. People weren't in such a rush, and they weren't used to quick editing. And but this movie, I would say it's very modern in that it just grabs you from the beginning and doesn't let go until the end.
I
So
I think
definitely a
that's
five.
probably a good metaphor for the movie is the fact I think this movie came out at a time where movies were ready to come out of, I don't want to say the dark ages, but what they had been in the 30s and the 40s and for most of the
Mhm.
50s, and it was ready to start becoming more of uh, modernization of what we see movies as what we see movies as today.
Mhm.
So, really quickly, I'm gonna agree with pretty much everything you said. This movie is fun. It's action packed. It's thrilling. Hitchcock is a creative genius in this movie. Um, the story is great. It's well acted, and it's easily a 5 out of 5 for me. And really quick before we get to the conclusion and wrapping up the show, did he make a cameo appearance in Psycho as well?
Yes, and actually, I remember. I don't have to Google it. I'm pretty sure when Janet Leigh's character, when she steals the envelope of money at the beginning. Do you remember when she's leaving town? She's in her car, and he
Yeah,
walks in front of her car to stop when she's waiting at a stoplight.
yeah.
I'm pretty
I
sure.
do. Yeah, no, I exactly remember. Yeah, I was sitting here. I'm like, there really wasn't a whole lot of opportunity in that movie for anything else other than, I mean, most of that movie is Janet and Tony Perkins,
Hmm.
or Vivian and Tony Perkins, or I mean, it's a very
Yeah,
small cast.
yeah.
Only really in the beginning of the movie would be the opportune moment for a Stan Lee esque cameo appearance
Yeah.
by Hitchcock. So, this actually was a lot of fun, a lot more fun than I anticipated it being, and I already had my expectations set high for this. So, um, definitely lots of fun. As always, we can't end the episode without thanking the listeners for being here each and every week. You guys are incredible, and you guys are the reason why we keep popping out new episodes each and every week. So, thank you for being here. Thank you to Jennifer as well for being here and coming on and discussing the movie with us. This was so much fun. And before I wrap everything up, I do want to let you know that you have an open invitation to come back anytime you want and discuss other movies with us.
Yay.
So
I'd love to.
obvi- you obviously have all of my contact information, so we can stay in touch. And because I didn't do it in the beginning, I will definitely say this: I because I have picked it up and I have read through it. I do highly recommend Jennifer's book as well, and I will provide all the information in the show notes for that and all the other stuff that she has going on as well. So, really quick, is there anything else that you would like to throw out there before we wrap up the show?
Just thanks for having me, Kasey. It was super fun for me too. It's always fun to talk about movies, and it was fun that we got to kind of dive into it and go on some James Bond segues or
Yeah,
tangents. Um, no, it was super fun. So I really appreciate you having me. And I just want to say, movies are magic. That's the name of my book, but I believe it. They are magic. They're a little
yes,
bit of science, a little bit of art, and a little bit of magic. So,
and a whole lot of creativity.
and a whole lot of creativity. Yeah. But thank you for
So,
having me.
like I said, anytime you want to come back, you are welcome to come back as well. As we discussed earlier in the episode, I believe, or it was before I hit record, I don't remember. But either way, this is the first episode of our movies everyone should see once in their life series that we're going to be doing on the show. So, definitely, I want to open the door for any other time that Jennifer has any other ideas about movies that she thinks people need to see at least once in their life. You're more than welcome to come back because this is not going to be just a one time thing. I think we're going to be doing it off and on for probably the duration of the show. So,
It's a very cool
um,
idea.
other than that, as I said, this is the first episode, and we're just now starting to piece together what this first segment will be about a 10 episode run. So we're starting to piece the schedule together. So you can stay updated on the Twitter account, on in the Facebook group, all of that, and find out what's coming up as well. I don't want to make promises that I can't keep. But other than that, again, thank you to the listeners for being here. Thank you, Jennifer, again as well. And at the end of the day, we hope you guys come back for an evening at the movies. Have a good week, guys.